Hi everyone, welcome to this week's TBT Transfer Talk. I've got at Jack W Football, Jack Widnall with me today to discuss all the latest transfers, goings on and stuff. Hasn't been too much in recent days, but we did actually plan on doing a show over the weekend, but I was away, sort of rounding up everything from the last week, so we're just sort of catching up with things today. Um, Last time we did the show, we was all saying how much we wanted Moreno to be done like that week. And it was eventually, like, because they had the Super Cup game on the Tuesday and everyone thought it would be delayed until after that. But it actually came out like 6 o'clock on the Tuesday on the day of the Super Cup that we'd agreed a fee, and he was pulled out. And the fee, like, according to Tony Barrett and like sort of Chris Bascom and James Pearce, is actually 12 million. Some say it's rising to 16 million with add-ons. So everyone's delighted with that. Are you happy with that then, Jack? Proper, like, we've needed a good left back for ages, haven't we? But
Yeah, I
Moreno, I
mean,
think, is a class one.
overall, we've always needed a left back, like you said, and to get such a decent prospect for such a cheap price, I think it's a bit of a steal, really. 12 million seems ridiculous when apparently Sevilla were quoting close to 20 earlier in the transfer window. So I think Ian Ayre has definitely played a blinder there. But
Mm,
Enrique, Flanagan, Johnson can play left back. We've got plenty of cover there with Manquillo coming in at right back. Brilliant signing.
definitely, yeah. On the same day as well, Martin Kelly, like, sort of came out of nowhere. He agreed a fee to go to Crystal Palace, and there's been a few like mentions of that link earlier in the window, but they actually came about 1.5 million, and he had his medical and joined later in the week, only for Tony Phillips to be sacked the next day. Not sacked, sorry, just left by mutual consent for some reason believed to be about transfers. So that's one less option at fullback, Jack, with Kelly going. But we've already got four really good ones, really, haven't we? Were you all right with him going?
I did like Martin Kelly. I thought he was a good player, but a bit hampered by a lot of pretty serious injuries, unfortunately for him. And I think Crystal Palace would be a good move for him. It's still a Premier League club. Even without Tony Pulis, they've got a very good chance of having a mid-table finish. And I think he'll have a decent chance to push on there. He was never really going to challenge much here with Glenn Johnson and, well, now Javier Manquillo coming in. Flanagan obviously established himself quite a lot last season. So I think it was a good move for everyone involved, really.
Yeah. So in terms of fullbacks now, like we've got Manquillo who started really well actually. I thought he was pretty good again yesterday in the win over Southampton. He's really good against Dortmund as well. He seems sort of, I mean, Rogers has said he's sort of fullback, like he's really good at defending, and but he does like to get forward. He's very athletic, and he's also very young and got a lot of developing to do. So we've got him, Flanagan, who we know all about. He's solid, maybe not as good going forward, but really good defensively, um, and obviously can play on both sides. And then we've got Glenn Johnson, who it's it's looking like, if Manquillo carries on his good form, he might be the one to miss out. Um, he didn't have the best of games. I mean, he hasn't played too well for a few months now, but yesterday wasn't very good at all, to be honest. He's been playing at left back with Manquillo coming in, so you'd maybe think that with him moving over to accommodate Manquillo that he'd be the one to miss out, and then of course Moreno as well. So some good options at fullback. What would be your first choice fullbacks then, Jack? I mean, assuming we played a four at the back, which we've started the season with and played in pre-season. Um, who would be your first choice? I mean, we've also got Enrique, we didn't mention there, probably a bit further down the pecking order. But what would your first choice fullbacks be?
We'll see. It is a tricky thing. It's a good thing we've got quite a lot of depth this season with so many games to play, really, because we struggled a bit towards the end of the last season. And I think if I'm picking the team, then I'm probably going to put Manquillo and Moreno in. I think Moreno is a brilliant player. I think
Mm.
it's a brilliant sign to make. Manquillo, I can't say I've really seen too much of. He got injured quite badly last season and missed quite a fair bit. But Glenn Johnson's really struggled in the last couple of years at Liverpool. I don't know, not really sure why. He's always been a very good player for us, but he's
Mm.
just never really been the same since really Brendan Rodgers came in. I don't know whether it's just him not suiting the style or whether he can't be asked. It's kind of a funny one. But obviously, you mentioned John Flanagan, very good defensively, also a very good option to have. Dep- depending on whether he can be a first team player or not, I'm not really sure. And obviously Jose Enrique, who I think gets a lot of bit unfair stick, really. I mean, he's a great defender, maybe not so good going forward, but still good options to have. But yeah, my first choice would be Manquillo and Moreno, really. I'm not sure who you'd put in there.
Yeah, I'd say the same, to be honest. I was just about to say, like, I think that's quite interesting what Rodgers has been saying about how his type of fullback is someone that is, it does all the defending first, but is actually, bust a gut to get forward when they can. And I think Moreno is actually quite similar to Manquillo with that. In terms, I think the whole thing, there's a bit of a myth going around, like, about Moreno. Yes, he's really good going forward, but that's not all he's got to his game at all. Like, I think people think sort of because of his pace and he's got a really good cross on him, that he's, very much sort of a wing back, and I think he's also playing the wing before, sort of on the left side of midfield. But he's actually very good defensively as well. Some of his tackles, I thought, I watched him quite a bit in the Europa League last year, and he does look really good defensively, pretty solid. Knows when to he's always sort of in the face of his opponent, like it won't give his opponent a yard of space at all. And I think Manquillo's sort of like that as well. And also Lovren, he's a good all-rounder, as we've seen. He was really good again yesterday, but he never gives his opponent much space at all. He's always on the front foot, and he's also very good on the ball. And I think that's what we're going to see with Moreno as well. And I think he also looks like he's got a really good pass on him, a bit like Lovren, and like I say, his crossing ability is good. So I think we've got a really good all-rounder there, and he's 22, Moreno, and you're looking at him and probably Manquillo as well, if he keeps up his good form, probably being our future fullback. So it's really good to have addressed that, actually. I mean, if I'm honest, I didn't actually expect us to get a right back in this window. I'm not sure if the club planned on it. I think it just sort of came about with the whole Manquillo being available on loan. I mean, like Arsenal were linked, and they maybe just sort of jumped in then. But did you think we were going to get a right back this window, Jack? Do you think?
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, a lot of people have been wanted a right back because of Johnson's form, but like I didn't personally think it was going to happen. I thought we had other priorities.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I mean, I always thought Glenn Johnson was pretty much a shoo-in for this season as well, which I wasn't too happy about, but I could understand it. I mean, he's coming towards the end of his contract and probably his Liverpool career, but I thought he had one more season basically to be given a chance for anyway. But I'd agree with you in when you said that Manquillo deal probably just came about. He was available, and we thought it would be a good move to make, and I think it is a good move. I mean, I was surprised to see him starting, to be honest. I can't really say I've seen too much of him, but speaking to Billy Edwards, who's obviously a massive Atletico Madrid fan, he was full of praise for Manquillo, said he's still very raw, but has plenty of ability. He was competent enough to start against Real Madrid for Atletico last season, so obviously a lot of talent there, and Glenn Johnson's got a lot of work on his hands to really secure that right back position now, and even that left back position.
Yeah, I think if you look at the game yesterday, I think what's helped Manquillo, just going back to you being slightly surprised he's got in the team, I'm the same. It was always going to be, because Flanagan's injured, and that's really helped him out. It was always going to be whether he fancied Manquillo or Enrique, and obviously Johnson can play on both sides, and Manquillo it is, and if you look at the game yesterday, I think it's fair to say that a lot of Southampton's attacks came down our left side. The goal sort of came about. Lucas wasn't really tracking his man, and Klein wandered in and smashed it in. But there was almost an identical goal, wasn't there? That came from that side, and so maybe that's what he's going to do with City. He's thinking, right, well, I'll put Alan in for Lucas, and I'll put Moreno in for Johnson, and that sort of shores up that side a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one good thing about the fullbacks coming in is there's not much expectation on them. I mean, whilst we've spent quite a lot of money on Moreno and Manquillo's obviously on loan, I mean, we've had Johnson there, who's struggled a lot the last couple of years. We've had Enrique there, who's never really been there. We've had to have Flanagan come in and basically step up to the plate, and we've never really had many fullbacks under Brendan Rodgers, so there's not too much pressure on the fullbacks coming in, so they can settle in quite calmly, I think. And I think that's always going to help them.
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, that's fullbacks. The other sort of stuff. I mean, everyone's still desperate for us to bring in. Like Rodgers has said that it's essential. Um, he was quoted the other night as saying that he wanted someone who, I think it was that knew the league and was sort of experienced and could come in and do a job now. Um, Obviously, we've got Origi out on loan. I think probably the plan is to bring him back and he'll be involved quite a lot. I mean, he scored the other night, which was good to see. He scored a penalty and won the penalty as well. And seems to be, I mean, that was their second game and that's his first goal of the season. So hopefully he can keep up that ratio. But the links have really been, I mean, not long after we did the last transfer talk show, Eto'o came up, um, the link to Samuel Eto'o. I think it'd be a 1 year deal, but the likes of James Pearson that have said that that would literally just be a last resort, and that we'd only go for him if it was towards the end of the window and we hadn't had anyone else. The Falcao stuff's carried on. Dominic King has said that we still hopeful in that, because when it first came out it was, oh, he's waiting for Madrid and Madrid are likely to get him. I mean, there's talk today that the plan for Madrid is to get rid of Di Maria and then bring him in then, but that obviously hasn't happened yet. Di Maria's sort of been linked with PSG and United, but he's still at Madrid at the moment. Falcao would be brilliant. I mean, there's talk of this £20 million. It would cost us £20 million to take him for the season altogether with wages and the loan fee. I'm not sure what you think about that, Jack. And Barini's also still at the club. There was talk that Gus Poyet put a deadline of yesterday for him to move there, and he didn't. Whether that sort of news was legitimate or not, I don't know. But something's definitely holding that up. He did sound pretty hopeful, Poyet, as well. But yeah, so the whole striker situation, Jack. Who would you like to see come in? Like, you fan of this Falcao talk?
Yeah, I think Falcao would be a brilliant signing. Obviously, I'm not really holding on too much of it. It doesn't look like interest is that. Whilst it is serious, it doesn't look like it's materialising much at the moment. Like you said, the loan fee is quite big, but I think it's more that there'll be a buy option included in that from what I've read. Obviously, a lot of the his wages are pretty big as well. But I'm not really too fussed. A lot of people use wages as a way to say that we shouldn't sign a player, but it's not really us paying it. It's not going to stop us going for any other players. Not that there are really any other players for us to sign this summer. So I think obviously Falcao would be the top signing. I mean, for us to be looking for a world-class striker whilst we still have Daniel Sturridge, and I don't think it would affect Daniel Sturridge too much. I mean, we saw last season he was adequate enough playing in a forward too, as much as he was a forward just on his own. So I think it would be a good signing. Obviously, Samuel Eto'o, I'm not too keen on. I think it would be a good signing if we did get him as a last resort, like you said. But I'm not too keen on him. I think he's a good player, a good striker, but for what he brings, I'm sure we could do a lot better. And I think we may as well just risk it with just Daniel Sturridge, to be honest, instead of Samuel Eto'o. From what it's appearing at the moment is that Ajax are only giving him about 36 hours to make a decision or something, or to hold off for Liverpool that may not even materialise. So he's got a lot to think about. But obviously Falcao's the one. I think with regards to Fabio Borini, I think most Liverpool fans do want to see him go for £14 million. That's just a ridiculous fee, to be honest. And I don't think he's going to get many chances this season, apart from the FA Cup. I mean, with Daniel Sturridge playing, with other players coming in, with Sterling doing so well, and yeah, I don't think Fabio Borini is going to get any more chances at Liverpool, and I think it's time he pretty much moved on.
Yeah, I wonder whether he's holding on and he's not moving based on the fact that we haven't actually brought anyone in yet, and there hasn't been any movement on that. It's definitely a strange one. I mean, I agree with you on the whole Eto'o stuff. We tweeted out off the Big First account whether the £20 million package, which, like I say, does include wages, to take Falcao on loan for the season would be worth it. Lozaki11 says, I think he's worth it as long as it's with a view to buy him permanently, like you said. at Sean Paul W says, if there's a clause in case of injury, then yes, but we must have an option to buy. Like, that's another thing to consider. He was injured the whole of last season.
That's a very good point. We see so often that players, when they come back from those cruciate ligament injuries, that they're only a fraction of the player they were before. So it is a huge gamble, and obviously if it is just a loan with an option to buy, that kind of reduces your risk, but you're still paying an awful lot of money for a player that's just come back from a very serious injury. So it's a bit touch and go.
I think you make a good point on Sturridge as well. I mean, I still think people underrate Sturridge quite a bit. Like, I mean, his goal record, like, he's always, whenever he plays, he seems to score. I mean, Rodgers made the point
It's
yesterday.
literally phenomenal. It's literally phenomenal. 36 goals in 50 games is just ridiculous at the level of
Considering all the strikers we've had, he's mad. I don't think he's appreciated enough, to be honest.
I agree with that, actually, because if you watched him against Southampton, he caused them so many problems. Like, even from the first to the last minute, every time he gets the ball, he skips around defenders. He's involved. He's always creating something. So
it was the same with that Dortmund game. He was amazing against Dortmund. I know that's pre-season, but just run rings around him. And this is the thing. I think a lot of people think, he's just a goal scorer. He just pops up with goals. He's a poacher. But he's really not. He's got so much more. And I think he's also the type of character that will step up without Suarez. I think he quite likes the challenges. Like, I always remember against his old clubs, he sort of really stepped up and
it's very thrived,
but I think what my point was, I think if we are to get a striker, Rodgers is still talking about using the diamond. I think he made the point yesterday, not yesterday, on Sunday, that we played it 8 times last season, the diamond, and we won with it 7 times and drew once with it. So he's talking it up. Obviously, Lambert came on and we switched to that later in the game against Southampton. But it's just finding someone that can partner Sturridge. I suppose a lot of strikers can, really. I mean, I'm not sure Rodgers is really into all that, can he partner him talk. I mean, he always said Suarez and Sturridge was in the partnership. They were just 2 good players.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I mean, when you've got a world-class striker, it's not necessarily like whether he can partner that player, it's whether they're just both good enough to play basically. And Falcao obviously is a world-class striker, so I think he'd have no problems accommodating Sturridge, and I'd even go as far to say that Sturridge is a world-class player, so he'd have no problems accommodating Falcao.
Yeah.
And if anything, the two would thrive off each other.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if it doesn't work out and we don't manage to get, this amazing striker, I mean, we won yesterday, and we've got the likes of Lallana and Markovic to come in, and Sterling looks on fire. I think he's going to score a lot of goals for us this season. He seems to have worked on his finishing, and his runs inside of that are brilliant. So yeah, just a couple more tweets on Falcao. Johnny Rhodes says, of course the £20 million deal is worth it. He could fire us to the title, never mind top 4. And Conor Merritt 95 says he's a great player, but what happens if he gets injured again on his first game and he's out all season? £20 million gone. So, I think everyone's in favour of it, basically, because you mentioned Billy Edwards earlier, and I always remember he says he's basically just the best number 9 in the world. He always talks him up. And, his goal record for Atletico Madrid was really good. He was unfortunate with the injury, but, imagine if we were to finish this window signing Falcao after all the business we've done, it'd be really good.
True. Everyone's talking about this injury problem with Falcao, though. He may have picked up one serious injury, but cruciate ligaments aren't common injuries. And then it's not easy to basically get that injury again. So it's a very difficult injury to pick up, although it is serious. And I think a lot of injury worries are just because he was out for so long, like 6 months. I don't think we really should be worried about his injuries. It's just whether he's going to be the same player as he was prior to his injury.
Yeah.
Which I'm fairly confident he would. He had enough talent easily to...
He looked really good against Arsenal in the Emirates Cup the other week.
Can't say I watched that. But...
Yeah, he scored a good goal in that. I mean, if we weren't to get Falcao, and I think we both admit it's probably unlikely, he was on the bench for Monaco the other day, so it does look like he's going to leave there. He does seem to be holding out for Madrid. Juventus has also been mentioned. But if we didn't get him, are there any other names you can think up that you wouldn't mind bringing in? There's talk of Cavani and that, and I must admit I'm not the biggest fan of him. there's also been Lavezzi stuff. But what do you think?
Two players I can't stand in Cavani and Lavezzi. I think whilst Cavani's a good player, I wouldn't want him at the club, and Lavezzi's 29 now. I think kind of a bad move would be Lavezzi. But Luis Muriel is one player. He's the only player that can really scrape my mind. Not too sure though whether we'd even be interested in him. Apart from Falcao, I think, like I said, I don't want Samuel Eto'o, but if we did ending up making a move for him, I can see why we would make a move for him. He was all right for Chelsea last year. That's about as far as I could say it. And obviously he is a very good player, but we have to remember, whilst he may not have been very good for Chelsea last year, they played quite a defensive, negative style of football that didn't really suit him. And you wonder whether a free-flowing, fast attacking game would probably suit Samuel Eto'o more. I mean, he flourished most last season when balls were getting played through to him at quite a quick pace. He had chances to run through defences and at the keeper, and he didn't really get many chances like that at Chelsea with the way they played. And he would certainly get more chances like that here.
Yeah, I mean, people are quick to write these sort of players off, and I must admit, I wouldn't, when that link first came up, I was a bit disappointed by it, really. I mean, it obviously hasn't come to nothing. But what is worth remembering is like the work that Rodgers does with players that people have written off. Do you remember when Flanagan came into the side at Arsenal for the first time last year and everyone was going mental? And now, he's a solid squad member. He was so good for us towards the end of the season. He's just, he's improved Henderson. You could even say Skrtel. Suarez improved loads under him, especially finishing-wise. And Sterling, of course, has come on loads. So you could argue as well with this the attacking players that Rodgers improves the most. So maybe that could work in someone's favour depending on who we bring in. But there's really not been much news on that at all. We've got 2 weeks now to the deadline, so something's going to have to pop up soon.
I think it's pretty much going to drag on till that deadline, if I'm honest.
It does.
It would be nice to sign a top striker, but I can't really see any of Falcao or even Eto'o happening, really.
Yeah.
As much as I'd like it to with Falcao, but I think it's just mainly clutching on the straws there. I mean, Chris Bascom and Dominic King, of all those reliable journalists, I mean, whilst they've mentioned his name, they've only said that we have an interest in him, and even that the player prefers a move to Real Madrid, so I'm not holding out much hope at all.
Yeah, same here. So yeah, that's strikers. Rodgers has said that it's one or two more in. You'd assume the second one is goalkeepers. Now, we have actually been linked with a keeper this week. Before that, there'd hardly been nothing, but there's quite a lot on the Argentina goalkeeper Romero. I think he plays for Sampdoria in Italy at the moment. He was on loan at Monaco last year. There's talk of a £1.6 million move. Quatters has also been linked with a move in the other direction. And I've also seen talk that Sampdoria only want to loan Romero out. But, he had a pretty good World Cup. I mean, he's not the most highly rated keeper, but I suppose they're probably thinking, Mignolet is probably the first choice, but someone half decent to push him and maybe play the cup games and give Mignolet a rest might be a good idea. So have you seen much of Romero, Jack? And do you think
probably no more than you have, if I'm honest, but from what I have seen of him, I do think he's a good keeper. Whilst Mignolet, I rate him quite highly, he's almost stagnates a little bit, making a few mistakes, and he does kind of need that. Some keepers don't need competition, and they're the very top keepers, but when you start making mistakes and you're struggling a little bit, you kind of need that keeper to keep you on your toes and really make sure you work. Whilst we've got Brad Jones on the bench, Mignolet's not really going to worry about making these mistakes. I mean, he's going to know he needs to cut them out of his game, of course, otherwise he could be replaced, but he's not really going to feel much pressure about making them. Whereas if we bring in somebody like Sergio Romero, who would be equally as competent playing the Premier League games, he's going to really know he needs to cut them out of his game and probably step up a bit more to ensure that it happens.
Yeah, and like I say, that's the only link at the moment. I wouldn't be too upset with that at all, especially with the fee being mentioned. Yeah, exactly. There's not much risk there. So Rodgers is saying it's one or two. We did a tweet out earlier saying where else would people be looking to strengthen if they were manager. Robert South says need a better backup goalkeeper and a player who can add goals. Ideally, can play up front and as a wide forward. I think that's something else we didn't mention about the forward. Maybe, since Dirk Kuyt, I suppose you could say Barini sort of can be considered to be a wide forward, and Sturridge can play there, but he's obviously a lot better through the middle. We
Yeah,
haven't really. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. In all honesty, I mean, I was thinking earlier, whilst we do have a lot of attacking options, Sterling, Lallana, and Markovic, these are all players that predominantly only play wide. That if they were put into a centre forward position, perhaps they'd look a bit out of place. And like you say, what if Sturridge is injured? We don't really have much backup. Whilst I think Raheem Sterling could do a pretty good job centrally, he's not accustomed to playing there. So I definitely agree with that.
Sterling, I think Sterling's. You want to play like Sterling involved, really, don't you? Because he can orchestrate a game really. Like his through balls and his runs are really good. So, like, I think he'll do a good job anywhere you play him. We've seen him play right back and be the best player on the pitch. But in my opinion, I mean, there's a lot of shouts for him playing up front. I'm sure he could do well there. He is adding goals to his game, but I'd rather see him thrive as more of a midfield player that can get a lot of goals.
Yeah. I think that's a good point as well. I mean, the striker we need to come in needs to be able to be a regular scorer. And whilst I agree Sterling could play anywhere on the pitch and do a good job, he's not accustomed to scoring pretty much a ratio of 1-1. So it'd be a lot of pressure on him to have, and it'd probably be a bit easier if we did have another striker come in.
Yeah, Remy would have been that wide forward, wouldn't he? He'd have been ideal. He played off the left quite a lot, and he scored goals in that position. He'd have been cheap. It's a shame that one didn't go through, really, but we obviously have our reasons for it. Other tweets on this. @_false9 says, we need another striker, and quite a few people said this, but also in need of an extra defensive midfielder, especially if Lucas leaves. Can't rely on Gerrard alone. To be honest, on that, I don't think Lucas will leave. There's been a lot of talk about it. Nothing really too solid. I think, maybe come January or next summer, where he's not playing many games as expected. I think the only reason he played the other day is because Chan, I think he wanted to play, a 4-2-3-1 with two holders, but Chan supposedly has a knock and could only have played up to 60 minutes. So I don't think he's going to play much, and maybe come January he might want to move on. So, I think maybe then we might look to buy another defensive midfielder, but at the moment, I'm not sure we need one. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, to be honest. I mean, I think people were saying, why didn't Emre Can start? And he may have had a knock, I'm not too sure, but I think for a 20-year-old to just come into a new league and just be expected to perform to a high standard, I mean, whilst we do mock Lucas for how he plays and the mistakes he makes, to put all that pressure on Emre Can, I think it's a bit unfair, and I think he's going to need time to settle in to this country, really. I think Lucas should probably stay a little bit, because I'd agree having all that responsibility on just Steven Gerrard is quite naive of us. I'm not sure. I'd agree that in January and next summer perhaps he probably will move on, but I think there'll be more defensive midfielder options around. There's not really many to sign apart from, Morgan Schneiderlin, who doesn't look like he's going to be leaving Southampton. I think our shopping in Southampton's pretty much done for the summer.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Danny Murphy was linking us to Schneiderlin last night on Match of the Day, wasn't he? But it'll be interesting to see how we finish the window in terms of signings. I think goalkeeper and striker look the most likely to. The other things we've got to mention: Ian Ayre was spotted yesterday in Amsterdam, or on a flight on the way to Amsterdam. Supposedly, there was no connection. He just left the airport straight away. So I was just trying to, we've all been trying to sort of work out what he could be there for. We've been linked with Bakali, the PSV winger. Eto's people were supposedly talking to Ajax, which is obviously based in Amsterdam. So they're the only two things, at the moment that we can guess on, really.
It could be anything. I mean, he structures a lot of our business deals as well. Whilst people are hot to mention the transfer window, it could be anything from a sponsorship deal, if anything. Yeah. Or he could just be fancying a piss off in Amsterdam for the weekend.
True, that would be typical in there. And then other than that, just to finish off, really, we've had Thiago Ilori, who we've been mentioning on the show a lot. has moved on to Bordeaux on loan for the season. He was at their game on Saturday night and he officially completed his deal on Sunday. So it'd be good to see him getting some games there this season. Yao Teixeira has joined Brighton under Sami Hyypiä. He supposedly came on the other day and did really well actually. So that might be a good place for him to develop in the Championship. Jack Robinson's also been linked with Brighton on loan, but nothing yet. On centre-backs, Jack, I mean, we've obviously now got Ilori's gone. We've got Toure, who looks like he's going to stay, he's rejecting offers. We've got Lovren, Sakho, Skrtel as the main three, and then we've got Aguero and Coates. If you were manager, would you be selling both of them, or would you be tempted to keep one? I mean, there's not much talk in terms of Aguero at the moment. I mean, Swansea have just signed a Napoli defender, so maybe there's talk that they might push on and look at Aguero. But in terms of Aguero and Coates has done well in this pre-season, would you look to keep them on or get rid?
I don't know, it is a strange one because whilst we have got those 6 defenders, I mean, we are actively pretty much looking to get rid of 3 of them in Coates, Aguero and Toure. But I agree that Coates did have a very good pre-season, but he's also another player that's, he's still young, he was in the Uruguay squad this summer, so he's going to want first-team football to prove he can basically retain his national team position. And with Skrtel, Sakho and Lovren being there, it doesn't look like he's going to get many games. And I'd agree. If anyone, I think Daniel Agger is going to be the sole one to leave. But if we're going to get rid of 2 or perhaps even 3 of them, we're going to be looking for the centre-back as well. I mean, you can't put all that... With Martin Kelly gone now, I mean, he could also play centre-back and probably would have been a good 4th choice to have, but not many players are going to want to be sat in that 4th and 5th choice position, particularly Daniel Agger and Sebastian Coates. And with Thiago Ilori at Bordeaux on loan, with that move, I think that's actually quite a good move. I think it was Jay Riley questioning it on Twitter, saying that he wasn't sure if a move abroad would be any good. But I think in terms of pace of a league and the tempo and the physicality of it, France is probably the closest to England out of the 5 top European leagues. I think it's a very good move for him, especially because Bordeaux are actually quite a good team, and I think he'll develop well there. But yeah, in terms of centre backs, with us looking to get rid of 2 or 3, it's going to be a strange one to see if we either offload them all, offload any of them, or look to replace them if they do go.
Yeah, the other link was obviously Coates to Sampdoria and in that Romero deal, so that was maybe one to keep an eye on. And in terms of other players that we may be letting go of, Assaidi, it's annoying this one because about a few weeks ago it became apparent that a deal had been struck between Stoke and Liverpool to take him back to Stoke on a permanent basis, but he's apparently holding out for a payout, or a payoff, sorry. So, it'll be strange to see what happens with him. I think he'll have to eventually go because he's not training or nothing. I'm not sure he's got an injury. He's just not involved and he hasn't really got a future at the club. So I think he'll eventually be moved on. But Stoke have actually signed Victor Moses, ironically enough. And there's a few links with other wide players as well. They played Bojan out wide and Arnautovic out wide the other day. So, maybe that one's dead, the Assaidi to Stoke stuff. And then other than that, Suso and Barini are probably the other 2 that we might maybe let go of. Suso's actually just reading between the lines, he seems to have gone on a break to Spain. He says he's got 2 days off. And that's actually what happened with Danny Pacheco last summer. Someone pointed out on Twitter when he was about to leave. I think the other players are training. Henderson and Lallana were pictured training today. So maybe, he's been given 2 days off, knowing that, he's off somewhere else. He wasn't on the bench the other day. New contracts being talked about. What do you think of Suso, Jack? I mean, so many people, talk him up so highly, but, Ibe seems ahead of him in the pecking order. He was on the bench the other day.
Yeah, I mean, you get this quite a lot of big teams when they have a lot of attacking options. I mean, it's nothing against Suso. He is a top quality player. I rate him very highly. But I think we've just got too many attacking options that are probably necessarily better than him, and probably could develop better and suit our system a lot more. And I don't think he's probably suited to playing for Liverpool anymore. I mean, whilst he's a very good player, and could easily do a job for us. I just think his time is pretty much up.
Yeah, I'd agree, to be fair. I think the only thing that we might be thinking about with that new contract maybe is just to give us, a bit of a safety net in terms of if we do sign him up to a new contract and he goes out somewhere on loan and they want to buy him, maybe we can make a half decent profit on him, having come through our academy for not too big of a fee at all. So
Rafa signed him from Cadiz, didn't he?
yeah, that's right. So have to wait and see on that. And yeah, I think we've basically covered everything now, Jack. So yeah, we'll round off there. I think we might possibly do a show towards the end of this week again, but like we said, there's not actually that much going on the last few days. We're all delighted with the Moreno news, and we're hoping that the likes of Markovic, Moreno, and Lallana are going to be involved more in the next couple of weeks. Lallana's starting training this week again, apparently, so hopefully we'll be seeing a bit more of these new signings. So yeah, thanks for joining me, Jack. Like I said, we'll be probably back towards the end of the week, and hopefully we'll have some news on the potential addition up front. So we'll see you then.